"This is my house. I will throw you out in the streets, and there is nothing you can do about that," Mr. Pius shouted as her few belongings scattered across the dusty yard. She thought her life was over. She thought there was no hope. But what happened next, when a stranger offered her a chance at everything she had lost, will make you question everything you know about justice, fate, and the power of one decisive moment. Viewers, have you ever been betrayed or humiliated in a way that felt like the end of your world? This is a story about redemption, timing, unseen helpers, and how life can rewrite itself when you least expect it. And if you love powerful and inspiring stories, kindly subscribe to this channel because the stories shared here might affect the way you see life forever. Angela had no warning. Life rarely sends one. 6 months earlier, she had been a wife with ordinary worries. Rent, fuel prices, market lists, and future plans whispered in the dark beside the man she loved. Michael was not rich, but he was steady. In Lagos, that alone was a blessing. Then death arrived without drama, no long illness, no farewell speech, just one sudden collapse and a silence that never left their room again. Grief didn't wait for Angela to recover. Bills arrived first. Sympathy followed. Then the slow disappearance of people who once called daily. By the 3rd month, she understood a truth many widows learn quietly. Life moves faster when you fall behind. She lived in a cramped compound in Agege, surrounded by noise, survival, and people carrying their own burdens. Every morning she woke before dawn, tied her faded wrapper, and whispered a prayer that asked for only one thing: strength for today. She wasn't dreaming of miracles, she just wanted to survive. Angela sold food by the roadside when she could. On days sales were poor, she drank water and slept early. She never complained, never begged, never blamed God. She believed something her mother once told her as a child: life listens when you keep walking. But walking became harder when the ground shifted beneath her. Her landlord, Mr. Pius, was not a mystery. Everyone in the compound knew his ways. He was a man who believed authority meant control and money meant permission. Yet until Michael's death, Angela had never crossed paths with him. After the burial, he began noticing her, not with hostility, not with anger, with interest. At first, he spoke kindly, offered support, suggested flexibility. Angela declined politely. She believed dignity was not something to bargain with, even in hardship. Soon after, pressure replaced politeness. Small inconveniences grew: water delays, complaints, tension. Angela endured quietly, focused only on paying what she owed. She borrowed, she saved, she planned. But timing is sometimes cruel before it is kind. On a scorching morning, when the sun felt too close to the earth, Angela's rent expired, and her plan fell short by weeks. She begged for time, not with entitlement, not with anger, with humility. "Please," she said, "I will pay. Just give me time." That was the day everything collapsed. Her belongings were moved outside. Neighbors watched in silence. The compound that once sheltered her turned into a stage for her lowest moment. Angela felt embarrassment, but something else rose stronger: acceptance. She didn't scream, she didn't curse, she didn't fight. She packed what she could and walked away. That walk changed her life, because sometimes eviction is not an ending. Sometimes it is a relocation arranged by destiny. Angela found shelter in an uncompleted building at the edge of the neighborhood. Concrete floors, no doors, no lights, just space and night air. Fear came at night, hunger came by day. Yet something strange happened in that place. For the first time since her husband's death, Angela slept without crying. It confused her. She didn't know why, but her heart felt lighter, as if life was clearing space. To survive, she followed other laborers to a construction site nearby. The work was brutal, carrying blocks, mixing cement, fetching water under the sun. People stared, some whispered, some pitied. Angela ignored all of it. Every evening she washed her hands, sat quietly, and told herself, "This is not permanent." She didn't know why she believed it. She just did. Then one afternoon, without announcement, without drama, a black SUV rolled into the construction site. Everything paused. The workers straightened. The foreman wiped his face. The air changed. A man stepped out, well-dressed, calm, observant. His name was Benjamin Clark. Angela didn't know him. She didn't look at him. She kept working, but Benjamin noticed her. Not because she was struggling, because she wasn't broken. She carried blocks with a strange dignity. Her posture didn't beg. Her eyes didn't complain. She worked as though this chapter was temporary. That was the moment destiny leaned in. Benjamin asked one question, and Angela answered honestly. What happened next did not feel dramatic, but it quietly shifted the direction of her life, and unknowingly it set a chain reaction that would one day circle back to the very man who thought her story had ended. Angela learned that survival was not just about strength. It was about endurance, without bitterness. Every morning at the uncompleted building, she woke before the city fully stirred. The concrete floor was always cold, even in the heat. She washed her face at a distant tap, tied her wrapper carefully, and walked to the construction site with measured steps. She did not rush. Rushing, she had learned, wasted energy. At the site, the work was heavy. Blocks cut into her palms. Cement dust settled into her hair. The sun pressed down without mercy. Yet Angela never complained. When other laborers rested, she rested. When they worked, she worked. But there was something different about her. She didn't shout. She didn't curse. She didn't collapse into self-pity. She worked as though her life was paused, not finished. People noticed, not in loud ways, in glances, in silence, in small moments when someone quietly moved out of her way or offered her water without explanation. The black SUV arrived again one afternoon. This time, Angela recognized it before she saw the man. The sight changed instantly. Tools slowed. Voices dropped. The foreman straightened his shirt. Benjamin Clark stepped out, dressed simply but deliberately. He did not walk like someone searching for attention. He walked like someone used to responsibility. Angela kept working. Benjamin noticed that. He watched her for a long moment, not as a spectacle, but as a question. Why did she move like this? Work was temporary. He didn't speak to her that day. He observed. The following week, he returned. This time, he asked the foreman quietly, "Who is that woman?" The foreman shrugged. "Widow. Hard worker." That answer stayed with him. 2 days later, Benjamin approached Angela again. "You work with focus," he said. Angela looked up, surprised. "I try to," she replied. "What did you do before this?" She answered without emotion. "I sold food. Before that, I was a wife." Benjamin nodded. There was no sympathy in his eyes, only curiosity. A few days later, she was called into the temporary office. This time, the conversation was longer. He asked about her education, her habits, her thinking. He listened more than he spoke. At the end, he said, "I need someone in my office, administrative work. It's demanding. If you're interested, start next week." Angela didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply said, "Thank you." The office was another world. Air conditioning hummed quietly. Desks were clean. People spoke carefully. Angela felt the difference immediately, not in comfort but in expectation. Mistakes mattered here. She paid attention. She learned software slowly, deliberately. She took notes after work. She stayed back without being asked. She corrected errors before they became problems. Benjamin noticed her work long before he noticed her presence. Weeks turned into months. Angela grew confident. Her voice became firmer, her posture changed. She moved from assistant tasks to coordinating schedules and managing records. She moved out of the uncompleted building. She rented a single room. She bought a mattress. She slept fully for the first time in months. Benjamin respected her distance. He never crossed lines, never asked personal questions unnecessarily, never hinted at anything beyond work. But admiration has its own language. He began to trust her judgment. He asked for her opinion during meetings. He assigned responsibilities he once handled himself. And slowly, almost without noticing, he began to miss her presence when she wasn't around. One evening, after a long project review, Benjamin sat alone in his office longer than usual. He realized something unsettled him. Angela's absence had disrupted his rhythm. That realization bothered him. He dismissed it. Weeks later, they worked late again. As they reviewed documents, Benjamin noticed her hands. No jewelry, no distractions, just quiet precision. He felt something unfamiliar, not desire, not attraction, but respect deepening into interest. Still, he said nothing. Angela noticed changes too, not flirtation, not pressure, but consistency. Benjamin listened when she spoke, trusted her decisions, defended her work without exaggeration. She felt safe, and safety was something she hadn't felt since Michael died. Months passed. Their conversations expanded beyond work, books, values, quiet reflections on life, still professional, still careful. Then one evening, Benjamin spoke honestly. "I admire who you are," he said, "not because of where you came from, but because of how you carry it." Angela said nothing. She didn't rush her heart. She had lost once. Time continued its work. Friendship grew roots, respect grew branches, and slowly, without urgency, affection found space to breathe. Angela did not know it yet, but her life had shifted permanently, and somewhere else in the city, unseen, unheard, and unconcerned, Mr. Pius was beginning to lose everything he thought was permanent. Angela's life did not transform overnight. It strengthened quietly. Each day at the office followed a rhythm she respected. She arrived before most staff, reviewed schedules, organized files, and prepared reports without being reminded. She listened carefully during meetings, spoke only when necessary, and never overstated her role. People noticed, not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. At first, she was the new woman from the site. Then she became Benjamin's assistant. Later, she was simply Angela, the one who handled things properly. Responsibility followed competence. Benjamin assigned her to oversee suppliers, then contractors, then payroll support. Each task came with pressure, and Angela met it with calm precision. She made mistakes, owned them, corrected them, and moved forward without excuses. Her confidence grew, but her humility remained intact. She dressed modestly, spoke respectfully, and never forgot the concrete floors she once slept on. That memory grounded her. It shaped how she treated cleaners, drivers, and junior staff. She greeted everyone, thanked everyone. That, too, was noticed. Benjamin observed her from a professional distance. He saw how staff responded to her, not with fear, but trust. He saw how problems landed on her desk and left resolved. He noticed that when she spoke, people listened. Something about her steadiness unsettled him, not because it distracted him, but because it challenged his assumptions. He had built his company through discipline and sharp judgment. He trusted systems more than people. Yet Angela operated differently. She trusted people, but held them accountable. It intrigued him. They worked closely, but boundaries remained clear. When conversations drifted toward personal topics, Angela kept them brief. She never leaned into familiarity. She never hinted at need. Her independence was quiet but firm. Benjamin respected that. At times, he found himself wanting to ask more about her past, but he didn't. He believed people revealed themselves when ready, and Angela was not rushing anything. Her evenings were simple. She cooked, read, prayed, and slept. She avoided unnecessary friendships. She saved money carefully. Stability mattered more to her than excitement. She had learned what instability cost. Months passed. Angela's role expanded formally. She became operations coordinator. Her salary increased. Her responsibilities doubled. She moved into a slightly better apartment, painted walls, lockable doors, a window that let in morning light. The first night she slept there, she sat on the bed for a long time, breathing deeply. This was not luxury, but it was peace. She whispered a quiet thank you, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for herself to hear. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Mr. Pius's life continued its familiar pattern. He collected rent, he ignored warnings, he dismissed rumors about inspections and permits. He believed his position insulated him from consequence. His house, the one he boasted about, the one he used to intimidate tenants, stood on questionable approvals. But confidence blinded him. He had never imagined a future where he would need mercy. Back at the office, Angela and Benjamin faced a challenging project. Delays, supplier issues, rising costs, staff tension. Angela worked late, coordinating responses, calming tempers, and restructuring timelines. She didn't panic. She didn't dramatize. Benjamin watched her handle pressure with clarity. One evening, after resolving a critical issue, he said quietly, "You handled that well." "Thank you," Angela replied. Nothing more. That night, Benjamin sat alone, longer than usual. He realized something subtle but undeniable. Angela had become essential, not just to the company, but to his daily rhythm. Her presence brought order. Her absence created imbalance. This realization disturbed him, not because it was romantic, but because it was personal. He had built walls around his emotions for years. Angela was not knocking them down. She was simply standing near them, and they were weakening on their own. Still, he said nothing. He respected time. Angela sensed a shift too, not in words, but in trust. Benjamin relied on her judgment more openly, included her in strategic discussions, asked for her perspective without hesitation. She never abused it. She offered insight, not control. That restraint deepened his respect. Weeks later, during a company dinner, Angela sat among colleagues, quiet and observant. Benjamin watched from across the room. For the first time, he saw her not as staff, but as a woman shaped by experience, strength, and restraint. Something settled in his chest, not urgency, certainty, but certainty needed patience, and patience had always been Angela's language. Neither of them knew it yet, but they were approaching a crossroads, and somewhere beyond their awareness, fate was preparing to close one chapter and reopen another. Angela stopped thinking of her life as fragile, not because hardship had vanished, but because she had learned how to stand without fear of falling. By the second year at the company, her presence was no longer questioned. New staff assumed she had always been there. Old staff deferred to her judgment naturally. She did not demand authority. It settled on her like something earned. Her days were full. Meetings, reports, site visits, phone calls that required firmness without aggression. She balanced efficiency with empathy, a combination rare enough to matter. Benjamin watched her evolve. He noticed how she handled conflict, not by raising her voice, but by clarifying expectations. He saw how she corrected mistakes privately, praised effort publicly, and carried responsibility without resentment. She reminded him of something he had once been and forgotten. Early in his career, before wealth and scale complicated things, he had believed work should improve people, not consume them. Somewhere along the line, success had narrowed his focus. Angela widened it again. They still did not speak openly about feelings, but the space between them changed. There was ease now, familiarity, comfort without dependency. They worked late on some days, sharing quiet meals in the office. Nothing elaborate, just food eaten between discussions. They talked about books, about values, about choices that shape lives. Angela spoke sparingly about Michael. When she did, it was without bitterness. "He taught me consistency," she said once. "He believed effort mattered, even when results didn't show immediately." Benjamin listened closely. He did not feel threatened by her past. He respected it. That respect became the foundation of something deeper. Time passed. Benjamin invited Angela to accompany him on a major project review outside Lagos. It was the first trip they took together, strictly professional. Separate rooms, clear boundaries. The journey revealed more than either expected. Angela handled unfamiliar environments with composure. She adapted quickly. She represented the company with clarity and restraint. Benjamin saw her in new light, not as potential but as equal. On the return drive, there was a long stretch of silence, not awkward, reflective. Finally, Benjamin spoke. "I trust you," he said simply. Angela nodded. "I know." That trust mattered more than words. Weeks later, Benjamin invited her to dinner, not as a boss, but as a man speaking honestly. "I don't want to misstep," he said. "I value what we've built, but I also don't want to ignore what's growing." Angela took her time before responding. "I don't rush decisions anymore," she said. "I've learned patience protects the heart." "I'm not asking for rush," Benjamin replied. "I'm asking for permission to be intentional." She looked at him steadily. "Then we move slowly," she said. And they did. Their relationship unfolded without spectacle. No gossip, no public displays, just shared understanding, boundaries, and deliberate choices. Months passed. They learned each other's silences, respected each other's space, built trust without dependency. When Benjamin finally asked her to marry him, it wasn't dramatic, it was thoughtful. "I want a life built on clarity," he said, "and not impulse, not fear. You bring that." Angela said yes, not because she needed rescue, but because she recognized partnership. Their marriage was modest, no excess, no display, just alignment. Angela did not leave the company. Her role expanded. She became a managing director alongside Benjamin, handling operations while he focused on expansion. Decisions were shared, authority balanced. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Lagos, signs of collapse began to appear. Government notices, survey markings, whispers of enforcement. Mr. Pius dismissed them all. He had dismissed warnings before. He believed power was permanent. He was wrong. Angela did not think about him. Her past no longer defined her daily life. But life has a way of reconnecting unfinished stories. And quietly, without drama, events were moving toward a moment that would test character, not success. Angela did not wake up thinking about where she came from anymore. Not because she had forgotten, but because life finally demanded her attention in the present. Her days were full. Meetings stretched long. Decisions carried weight. Every choice affected dozens of people. She carried that responsibility carefully. Marriage had not softened her. If anything, it had sharpened her sense of accountability. She understood now that progress was fragile, that stability could disappear if handled carelessly. So she stayed alert. While Angela's life was settling into structure and purpose, Mr. Pius's life was beginning to loosen at the seams. At first, the signs were small. Rumors moved through the street, quiet conversations about government surveys, markings on nearby buildings, enforcement teams sighted in neighboring areas. Some landlords grew uneasy, others ignored it. Mr. Pius laughed. "They've been saying this nonsense for years," he told anyone who would listen. "Nothing will happen." Confidence had always protected him, or so he believed. But confidence does not stop bulldozers. The notice came one morning, pasted boldly on his wall. Red ink, official stamp, clear instructions. He tore it down. The second notice arrived 2 days later. He ignored it again. The third came with a date. That was when worry finally crept in. He made calls, pulled favors, promised payments. Every door he knocked on closed gently in his face. The connections he relied on had moved on. The influence he once wielded had expired. On demolition day, chaos filled the street. Sirens shouting, engines rumbling, tenants ran, children cried, furniture was dragged out hurriedly. Mr. Pius stood helplessly as the structure he once ruled from was reduced to rubble. Walls collapsed, roofs caved in, years of arrogance disappeared in dust and noise. By evening, nothing remained. No house, no income, no authority, just silence. Days passed slowly. Without rent money, survival became difficult. He sold possessions, borrowed money, lowered his voice, learned to wait. The city he once dominated no longer noticed him. Frustration hardened into desperation. He walked the streets searching for opportunities he had once considered beneath him. He stood in queues, filled forms, endured rejection. That was when he heard about a construction company expanding rapidly, one known for structure, fairness, and steady pay. He hesitated. Pride argued. Hunger answered. He waited days before finally deciding to apply. But before that step, he had to survive. Each night he slept uneasy, haunted by memories of tenants he had dismissed, pleas he had ignored, doors he had shut without remorse. Angela's face crossed his mind more than once. He brushed it away. Meanwhile, at the company, Angela reviewed expansion plans. New hires were anticipated. Departments were restructuring. Recruitment would soon begin, but it hadn't yet. Life was aligning quietly. Angela felt settled, unaware that the past was moving toward her, not with anger, but with consequence. Mr. Pius did not know it yet, but his lowest point was still unfolding, and when desperation finally pushed him through that office door, it would not be as a landlord, but as a man stripped of certainty standing before a future he never imagined. Poverty humbles without apology. For Mr. Pius, the days after the demolition stretched long and empty. Mourning no longer brought purpose. There were no tenants to intimidate, no rent to collect, no gate to stand behind like a symbol of relevance. He woke wherever he could, sometimes on a borrowed mattress, sometimes on a cold floor, listening to the city move on without him. Hunger arrived quietly at first. Then it became loud. He sold what little remained. A wristwatch he once flaunted, shoes he no longer needed, a phone that stopped ringing anyway. Each sale felt like another piece of his former self slipping away. People avoided him. Those who once laughed at his jokes now crossed the road. Former tenants pretended not to see him. Friends who used to greet him loudly suddenly had excuses. For the first time, Mr. Pius tasted what it meant to be invisible. At night, memories returned uninvited. Faces, voices, pleas. Angela's face lingered longer than the others. He remembered her, kneeling. Remembered her calm refusal. Remembered how easily he had dismissed her pain. At the time, it had felt ordinary, just another display of authority. Now it felt heavy. Desperation forced reflection. He began walking farther each day, scanning streets for opportunities, security jobs, cleaning work, driving positions, anything that promised steady income. Rejection became familiar. You're too old. We filled the position. Leave your number. Nobody called. Then, one afternoon, while sitting outside a roadside food stall, he overheard two men talking. There's a construction company expanding, one said. They are known for structure, fair pay. Mr. Pius listened carefully. What's the name? He asked quietly. The man told him. That night, Mr. Pius did not sleep. He weighed his options, what little remained of them. He knew construction sites, knew logistics, knew how to manage people, but he also knew pride. Applying there would mean standing among men he once looked down on. It would mean waiting, explaining, submitting. Hunger answered that hesitation. The following morning he borrowed clothes, simple, clean, unremarkable. He washed carefully, rehearsed his words, and joined the line outside the company building. Inside, order ruled. Forms were filled, instructions given, silence respected. Mr. Pius followed everything carefully. He did not know who ran the company. He did not ask. When his application was accepted for review, he felt a fragile sense of relief. Days passed. Then he received a message inviting him for an interview. Hope flickered cautiously. On the day of the interview, he arrived early, sat quietly, watched people move with purpose. When his name was called, he stood slowly. The assistant led him down a familiar corridor. The door opened, and time paused. Behind the desk sat Angela, not the woman he evicted, not the widow he dismissed, but a leader, composed, assured, undeniable. Recognition struck him instantly. His legs weakened. Angela looked up calmly. Their eyes met. She did not flinch. She did not smile. She did not reveal emotion. "Please sit," she said. Her voice carried authority earned, not borrowed. Mr. Pius sat, unable to speak. Angela reviewed his file carefully. She did not rush. She did not dramatize. Finally, she looked up. "Your experience is noted," she said evenly. "However, we won't be proceeding with this application." That was all. No anger, no explanation, no revenge, just finality. Mr. Pius nodded slowly. He stood, bowed his head slightly, and walked out. The office door closed behind him. Outside, the city felt different, not cruel, clear. He understood then that power was never owned, only borrowed, and that dignity once lost is not easily regained. Angela returned to her work. Her hands did not shake. Her heart felt light, because redemption is not about punishment. It is about becoming someone your past no longer controls. Days passed after that first interview, but Mr. Pius could not shake the memory of Angela's calm authority. Every night he replayed the scene, the way she had looked at him, the steady hands, the composed posture, the quiet strength that made his arrogance shrink to nothing. It was unbearable. Pride had been stripped from him, but shame had lodged deep in his chest. Finally, desperation pushed him to a decision. He would return, not for a job, not for money, not for pride. He would beg her to forgive him and give him a chance. The morning was humid, Lagos heavy with traffic and dust. Mr. Pius wore his borrowed clothes carefully. They were clean, plain, and modest, an image he hoped might soften the tension he expected behind the office door. When he arrived at the construction company, he hesitated in the lobby. His hands shook slightly, though he tried to mask it. When the assistant saw him, she raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Pius?" she asked carefully. He nodded. "Yes, I need to see Ms. Angela Clark, please." Moments later, the door opened, and Angela emerged. She paused. Recognition sparked in her eyes, but there was no warmth, no trace of indulgence, just calm authority. "Sit," she said, pointing to a chair. Her voice had no hint of judgment, no emotion beyond clarity. Mr. Pius obeyed immediately, lowering his head. For a long moment, neither spoke. Angela reviewed the documents he had submitted last time. Then she looked up. "Do you understand why your application was declined?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "Yes, I do." Angela nodded once. That should have been the end of it, but he could not stop himself. I came to ask, to beg," he said quietly. "I was wrong. I was cruel. I treated you badly. I want to apologize, and, if possible, I want to work for you. Please, give me a chance." Silence filled the room. Angela's gaze was steady, calm, unshaken. "You were cruel, yes," she said slowly. "You humiliated me. You evicted me when I had nowhere to go. You threatened my dignity, and you expected the world to forget it." He bowed his head further. "I know. I see that now. I regret it every day." Angela leaned back slightly. Her hands rested on the desk. Her voice remained even, but her words carried weight. "Power is temporary," she said. "Authority borrowed. Pride expensive. You cannot undo what you did. You cannot erase the years you treated me as less than human. And I cannot hire you, not now, not ever." His face went pale. His throat tightened. Words failed him. Please," he whispered. Angela shook her head. "Some lessons are learned through failure," she said, "and some redemption is not for everyone. You will have to find yours elsewhere." He sat frozen. The reality of her refusal sank in. Not humiliation this time, not punishment, but finality. Angela's eyes softened slightly, not for him, but for herself. She had built her life on clarity, fairness, and respect. She would not let her past be used to placate a man who had broken her dignity. Mr. Pius rose slowly, defeated. He bowed his head once more. "I understand," he said. He turned and walked out. The office door closed behind him, echoing softly. Angela returned to her work, calm, composed, unshaken, because some doors, once closed, are meant to remain closed, and some lessons are learned only when the consequences of pride and cruelty finally arrive. Outside, the city moved on. Mr. Pius walked the streets again, stripped of influence, humbled by life, and forced to reckon with himself. Inside, Angela thrived. Her company expanded, her marriage flourished, her dignity remained intact. The world had shifted, but she had remained the same person she always intended to be, strong, fair, and unwavering. The city of Lagos never paused, but some lives had changed completely, silently yet permanently. Angela walked through the polished halls of the company. She now co-managed side by side with Benjamin Clark. The office hummed with life, staff moving efficiently, phones ringing, contractors reporting in. Yet Angela felt calm, almost serene. In the midst of it all, her hand brushed against Benjamin's as they reviewed project reports, a subtle gesture, a quiet reassurance. No words were needed. Their partnership had grown beyond the professional. It had become a foundation built on mutual respect, shared values, and the understanding that each had survived life's harshest trials to reach this point. Angela remembered everything: the nights on cold concrete floors, the hunger gnawing at her stomach, the tears shed when Mr. Pius dragged her belongings into the open yard. Every memory that had once threatened to break her now strengthened her resolve. Benjamin had been patient. He had seen her quiet resilience, her unwavering focus, and her intelligence. Over months, that admiration had grown into deep respect and eventually into love. And now, as they walked through the office together, it was clear her life was no longer fragile. She had built something lasting, not just for herself, but for them both. Meanwhile, Mr. Pius's life had crumbled quietly elsewhere. The demolition of his illegal structure had stripped him of everything. Tenants scattered, influence vanished, and connections ignored him. He wandered the streets, stripped of authority, humbled by circumstance. The world he had tried to dominate now moved around him, indifferent to his former pride. He did not return to Angela's office. No begging, no appeals. He understood, perhaps too late, that some bridges could never be rebuilt. The humiliation of his downfall was complete, but Angela did not need to witness it. Life had already delivered justice. In the office, Angela paused at the window, watching Lagos unfold below. Cars rushed, market vendors called out, and the city thrummed with energy. She felt a quiet smile tug at her lips. Benjamin joined her silently, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You've come far," he said softly. Angela nodded, her eyes still on the streets below. "Farther than I ever imagined." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "And yet, you've remained who you are, not bitter, not broken, just strong." She turned to him, meeting his eyes. "I never wanted revenge. I just wanted to live." "And you have," Benjamin said. "And now we build something together that lasts. Not because life gave it to us, but because we earned it." Angela's smile deepened. She realized then that the true redemption in her story was never about Mr. Pius. It had been about herself, about surviving cruelty without losing her soul, about embracing opportunity without arrogance, about walking through life with dignity intact. Benjamin stood beside her, not as a rescuer, but as a partner who had respected her journey every step of the way. Together they had transformed hardship into strength, grief into clarity, and suffering into a foundation for a life of purpose. Outside, Lagos roared on. Inside, Angela and Benjamin looked over the company floor, their hands brushing, their hearts aligned. And somewhere beyond the city's noise, Mr. Pius continued to wander, a cautionary figure of what happens when cruelty, arrogance, and short-sightedness shape a life. Angela whispered softly, not in triumph, but in peace. "Some lessons cannot be taught. They must be experienced, and some victories are measured not by punishment, but by how brightly you rise after being cast down." The city carried on, indifferent as ever. But in that office, in that partnership, in that quiet fulfillment, Angela had everything she needed: redemption, dignity, love, and a life rebuilt with her own hands. And that, she knew, was the true measure of triumph.